Across the nation, anxieties are reaching a boiling point, and a cacophony of alerts reverberates through the financial sectors as whispers of a bank blackout echo in the ears of wary citizens. Reports of accounts frozen and access denied are surfacing with alarming frequency. This isn't just the usual anxiety surrounding financial institutions. This is an institutional crisis unraveling in real time. As individuals scramble to access their funds, their alarmed calls for help contrast sharply with the placating messages from the Federal Reserve, which assures us that stability is intact and that the banking system is robust. But underneath this facade lies a grave reality, a fundamental lie we have been conditioned to believe, that our funds are safe, that we can rely on these institutions to ensure our financial security. As news outlets bombard us with information, we find ourselves caught in a crossfire of narratives. The Fed paints an idyllic picture, assuring the public of robust capital reserves and liquidity, but the chilling experiences of everyday Americans tell a different story. The central banks expound on their desire to maintain financial stability, yet individuals are confronting the stark truth of a banking system that seems increasingly fragile. The dichotomy could not be starker. On one side, the airbrushed confidence of governmental assurances, and on the other, the raw apprehension reverberating through closed bank doors. Enter Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha, a figure whose insights have been relentlessly scrutinized in good times and in bad. While the bureaucrats tout their comforting mantras, what is Buffett doing? He isn't engaging in effusive commentary or making flashy proclamations. Instead, he is quietly acting, hoarding cash and stepping away from the excesses of consumer goods and financial institutions. This behavior speaks volumes. Buffett's decisions send a silent signal, an unmistakable warning that echoes louder than any press release. The time for reckoning is approaching. The world's most astute investor is not simply watching the trends, he is preparing for a seismic shift. Buffett's actions reflect more than just personal strategy. They reveal an ominously prescient reading of the financial landscape. The accumulation of cash in uncertain times is not a defensive measure. It is a calculated stance against an impending crisis, a stance that traditional authorities continue to ignore or misinterpret. While politicians and central bankers offer reassurances, casting a reassuring gaze towards the horizon, Buffett undertakes the more prudent course of readiness, positioning himself for the inevitable turbulence ahead. As we take stock of the situation, we must acknowledge that the alarms are ringing not only from the confines of our wallets, but also in the hallowed halls of finance, where a reckoning of systemic issues is desperately overdue. The so-called safeguards proffered by central authorities are becoming increasingly tenuous, and I urge you to observe closely. The facade of security is crumbling before our eyes, as infrastructure falters and innovation morphs into uncertainty. Is this a mere blip on the radar, or are we being ushered into a new paradigm where the rules we once trusted will no longer apply? The societal belief that our accounts, our hard-earned money, will be waiting for us tomorrow can no longer be taken for granted. As the fog of complacency begins to lift, we must confront a sobering truth. It is not only possible that a banking crisis looms on the horizon, it is a reality that is already unfurling in front of us. As we navigate this turbulent terrain, remember Buffett's whispers of caution in the silence of his calculated maneuvers. Embrace the clarity of action over the noise of words. The system is evolving, and with its evolution, we must reassess our dynamics and prepare for a future where the only constant is change itself. In this environment of uncertainty, vigilance is paramount, and as the alarm bells ring, we must attune ourselves to the silent signals of those who have weathered storms before us. Imagine you walk into a restaurant, let's call it the Bank Bistro. The place is bustling, with patrons enjoying their meals, talking loudly about their finances, and waving their credit cards like magic wands. You approach the counter, ready to pay for your meal, only to discover that the chef has run out of ingredients. The fridge is empty, and the pantry is bare. Despite the colorful menus boasting a wide array of delectable dishes, the reality is grim. There is nothing to serve. This scenario encapsulates the essence of our current financial landscape. The Bank Bistro appears to be thriving. Customers are placing orders and swiping cards, but behind the scenes, the systemic fragility of the banking infrastructure is exposed. The problem lies not merely in mismanagement, but in something more profound. The very foundation upon which this bistro operates has collapsed. Just as the restaurant cannot fulfill its promises when it lacks the ingredients to serve its patrons, our banks are failing to meet the expectations of depositors and investors alike because they are fundamentally unprepared for the realities of our economic environment. The ingredients of our banking system are comprised of liquidity and trust, two elements that have been eroded over time. Historically, banks operated on the principle of maturity transformation, borrowing short-term and lending long-term. They would collect deposits, promising immediate access to funds while cleverly investing in longer-duration assets. This system worked well enough during stable economic periods, allowing for smooth transactions and the growth of credit. However, a seismic shift has occurred. We are now facing a reality where trust has faded and liquidity is drying up. The time-tested formula that sustained our banking ecosystem is under siege. As whispers of a bank blackout proliferate, we must confront the unsettling truth. Accounts are indeed being frozen, not just due to miscommunication or technical glitches, but because the system itself lacks the resilience necessary to weather the storm. It is a catastrophic failure of infrastructure. A network that once functioned as a robust safety net for individual savings has now become a precarious, overextended tightrope. Let us draw an analogy to a credit card, a convenient financial tool that allows you to purchase goods now and pay for them later. This mechanism is analogous to how banks operate through leveraging deposits into loans. Here's where the veil is lifted. While a credit card provides the illusion of purchasing power, it carries inherent risks, the prospect of escalating debt and the burden of interest. When users overextend themselves, the cards become instruments of dependency and fragility. Similarly, banks that have over-leveraged themselves and engaged in shadow banking activities now find themselves vulnerable when the tides turn. In recent years, banks have heavily invested in high-risk assets, promising astonishing returns to keep up with the market's expectations. However, when reality smacks against inflated projections, they are left scrambling to fulfill promises. Just as a consumer who maxes out their credit card finds themselves in a tight spot, banks are now struggling to provide liquidity amidst growing mistrust and impending insolvency. What we are observing is the manifestation of systemic issues, where the very structures that were supposed to deliver safety and confidence have devolved into volatile entities. The safeguards once thought to be in place are crumbling under pressure. We've subscribed to the sentiment that money in the bank is akin to a safety net, but in reality, it's more like a facade held together by thin threads of institutional trust. As the old systems fail to adapt, they reveal an undeniable truth. The frameworks that have governed our financial lives are breaking down. As we witness the closure of accounts and the chilling reality of being locked out of our own funds, we recall a sobering lesson about reliance on a system built on shaky ground. The illusion of security can only cover cracks for so long before the weight of reality causes it to crumble. Yet, there is still a glimmer of hope. While the current predicament appears dire, it also presents an opportunity for recalibration. We must recognize the fragility of our monetary system and seek resilience. Acknowledging the challenges we face is the pathway to preparedness. Only then can we take actionable steps to safeguard our financial future in this evolving landscape. As Buffett has demonstrated through his actions, this is a time for vigilance and prudence, an invitation to rethink our financial strategies and fortify our positions as we move ahead into this uncertain terrain. Imagine it is Tuesday morning, and the sun rises, casting its light into your living room. You stretch, yawning, and as you begin to adjust to the day, you pull out your phone to check your bank account. It is a habit, one that once brought a sense of reassurance, a fleeting glimpse of the financial stability that you steered your life upon. But today, as you log in, a sense of dread washes over you. The screen displays a stark warning. Access denied. Your account has been temporarily frozen due to unusual activity. You blink a few times, hoping it's some kind of glitch, but the message remains unwavering. Your mind races, trying to comprehend the implications. You immediately rush to the fridge, your stomach grumbling in protest, only to find that the meals you planned for the week might become another victim of this financial chaos. You reach for your credit card, comforting yourself with the idea that it could help you navigate through today's unexpected hurdles. But with a sense of foreboding, you swipe the card only to face yet another disheartening response. Transaction declined. Panic grips you as the cashier looks at you with disappointment. It is as if a veil of trust that once enveloped your transactions has been torn away. The atmosphere seems thick with uncertainty, your regular routine now feeling like a tightrope walk over an abyss. As you step outside, you glance around. The streets are filled with faces that mirror your anxiety. People clutching their devices, their brows furrowed in distress as they attempt to access their funds, their savings, their livelihoods. This fear isn't just yours. It has enveloped the community. News reports flash across screens, talking about an alarming rise in account freezes and financial instability. Everywhere around you, individuals are facing the cold, hard reality of the bank blackout. This isn't a mere inconvenience. It is a fundamental unraveling of the trust we placed in the very institutions that promised us protection and security. You reach your workplace, and even as you settle into your routine, a sense of unease lurks beneath the surface. Several coworkers share quiet rumors about potential layoffs. "Did you hear about the latest round of cuts?" one whispers. "They're warning us to reduce discretionary spending." The thought strikes you hard. Just a few months prior, your job felt secure, a solid foundation against the unpredictable tides of the economy. Now, it feels shaky. What if your paycheck also hangs in the balance, tethered to a system that seems more precarious day by day? You suddenly question your financial decisions. Those recent expenses, the long-term plans you thought were sensible, now feel like options running out. With each passing moment, the realization grows stronger. The convenience of digital banking, the ease of accessing your money at the tap of a button, now resembles an illusion. Your savings, accumulated over years of hard work, now feel like promises drawn in the sand, vulnerable to the whims of external forces. The burden of worry is stabbing, pulling at your chest as you imagine the possible futures. What if you can't pay your rent? What if other avenues for support dry up, leaving you with no safety net to catch you as you fall? As you sit at your desk, it becomes increasingly clear that this crisis touches every corner of society, and you are not exempt. Conversations shift from small talk about weekend plans to anxious pondering about the stability of the financial system. It permeates thoughts around the lunch table, slips into casual exchanges, and burgeons into a palpable sense of fear. A collective realization that we may have been too trusting in the very institutions we believed had our backs. On this harrowing Tuesday, the weight of uncertainty looms large, and as you prepare for the rest of your day, a mere shell of the normality once confidently expected, you ponder on Warren Buffett's warnings and the silent signals emanating from his actions. The deafening echoes of financial fragility chip away at the facade, revealing the cracks in systems that should have long been fortified, but have instead crumbled under the strain of overconfidence and complacency. If you are enjoying topics like this and want to stay informed about the real risks, consider following our channel as we navigate these precarious waters together. The echoes of history resonate with disturbing clarity as we confront the realities of the current financial turmoil. To dismiss the resemblance between our present circumstances and past crises would be a grave error. Humanity has navigated these turbulent waters before, and the cataract of historical events serves as a profound reminder that this time is not different. Let us cast our minds back to 1929, a year that forever altered the landscape of American finance. The Roaring Twenties had given way to an inflated sense of security, driven by rampant speculation and a false sense of economic invulnerability. Like the unchecked optimism that echoes today, investors were ensnared in the euphoria of a booming stock market. However, when the inevitable collapse occurred, the panic that ensued was incandescent, punctuated by the untimely realization that banks were unprepared to fulfill their obligations. Families watched helplessly as their savings vanished, their trust in the banking system shattered. The Great Depression was born from this catastrophic failure to sustain confidence and implement robust safeguards. Fast forward to our own time, and one cannot help but see the parallels. An over-leveraged banking system, bolstered by and diluting trust, finds itself facing unprecedented challenges that threaten to undo it. A mere 8 years after Wall Street's nosedive, the 1937 recession caught many by surprise, unraveling the very fabric of economic recovery. This downturn emerged at a time when policymakers miscalculated the resilience of a system still recovering from the trauma of 1929. The government's overreach into fiscal and monetary policy served to stifle growth, and once again, ordinary citizens found themselves subject to our leaders' miscalculations. Bank failures proliferated, as economic instabilities revealed intrinsic frailties. As we look at our present landscape, with the Federal Reserve desperately attempting to juggle conflicting demands for stability and growth, one must ask, have we truly learned from history, or are we repeating it in a grand cycle of misjudgment? Moreover, revisit the decade of the 1970s. This era was defined by stagflation, a troubling compound of stagnation and inflation that wreaked havoc on economic systems across the globe. Banks struggled to adapt as demand for consumer credit surged amidst crippling inflation and rising interest rates. As liquidity dried up, individuals facing financial woes were left without recourse. The crisis catalyzed mistrust in financial institutions, and the ripple effects were profound. The turmoil of the 70s teaches us a crucial lesson. When central banks fail to act decisively and prudently, uncertainty proliferates and the consequences are borne by the very people they aim to protect. In our current age, we are observing a similar dissonance. Those in power prioritize short-term solutions over long-term stability, crafting a precarious environment where our households once again bear the brunt of systemic collapse. This historical pattern reaches its climax in events like Cyprus in 2013. The island nation, once perceived as a financial haven, faced a crippling crisis that forced the government to impose levies on bank deposits. As individuals frantically attempted to access their funds, the reality sunk in that even the safest of havens could crumble, and the trust once placed in institutions could evaporate overnight. Depositors became unwilling participants in a bailout scheme that favored the very banks that had failed them. This dissonance between government assurances and the harsh reality for the average citizen provides a chilling testament to the fragility of fiscal safeguards and the precarious balance of trust. Today, as we witness the plight of frozen accounts and bank access denied, we must acknowledge the stark echoes of the past reverberating through the corridors of our financial institutions. History tells us that the human psyche grapples with the allure of the present and the scars of the past, often overlooking the cyclical nature of economic downturns. As we find ourselves entrenched within a seemingly modern crisis, we must recognize that each financial upheaval carries with it lessons steeped in time. Like the fallen empires that preceded us, our current system stands precariously on the precipice of dissolution. The systemic vulnerabilities, exacerbated by reckless decisions and misplaced trust, cast a long shadow over our pursuit of financial security. As we parse these historical lessons, we are reminded that vigilance is paramount. Structural weaknesses have beset our financial institutions time and again, each manifestation serving as both a warning and a precedent. The illusions of safety born from confidence and complacency can be swept away in an instant. As we navigate the dangers that loom ahead, we must not only heed the whispers of Buffett, but also embrace the wisdom encoded in the annals of history. For in doing so, we grant ourselves the clarity to act, the clarity to prepare for a world in which history ceaselessly resonates, demanding our attention and vigilance. As the dust settles on the panic instigated by the unfolding bank blackout, it's imperative to unveil the hidden mechanisms at work, mechanisms too often obscured by the media's sensational narratives. While headlines scream of inflation and stock market volatility, they divert attention from the critical undercurrents exacerbating this financial calamity, namely, the physical infrastructure of our banking systems and the obscure legislation enacted under the pretense of protection. The superficial analysis of soaring prices and tightening monetary policy misses a profound and troubling truth. Our financial institutions are structurally failing. The very systems designed to safeguard our savings are crumbling from within. The degradation of this infrastructure has been a slow and steady erosion, woven intricately into the fabric of modern banking. Just as a dilapidated building can appear stable from the outside while its foundation crumbles away, our banks, too, have masked their fragility with convenient narratives of liquidity and strength. But the crisis lays bare the reality that many institutions are operating on antiquated frameworks, ill-prepared for the economic pressures we face today. At the heart of this catastrophe is a misguided dependency on physical infrastructure. Many financial systems rely on outdated technologies and processes that fail to hold up under the scrutiny of contemporary demands. The banking system often runs on legacy systems that struggle with the volume of transactions and the speed required in a digital age. When a surge in withdrawals occurs, like the mad dash to secure one's funds during a crisis, these creaking mechanisms buckle, shutting down services and leaving millions with frozen accounts. The bright, flashing lights of technology cannot hide the fact that beneath, the underlying systems remain vulnerable. This situation is not solely a matter of old technology, but is further exacerbated by legislation that prioritizes control over genuine stability. The government's solution, emerging in the form of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and capital controls, represents a misguided approach to an intricate problem. Instead of improving the transparency and functionality of financial systems, these measures threaten to entangle individuals in a web of bureaucracy far worse than the existing barriers we face. CBDCs offer a glimmer of innovation, yet they also present a chilling reality where the central authority could exert unprecedented control over citizens' wealth and access. Such power could translate into a system that could freeze assets at will, an extension of the very problems we are now confronting. Would this not only exacerbate fears of a bank blackout, but deepen our dependency on an already faltering system? Moreover, capital controls intended to curb financial instability could have unintended consequences, pushing further financial intermediation into obscure and unregulated channels, what often gets dismissed as the shadow banking system. While regulators aim to assure the public that their measures will forestall disaster, history has shown time and again that restricting access to capital only pushes individuals into corners where risks multiply. It's not merely the inconvenience of limited choice. It's a fundamental re-engineering of trust. People will adapt by finding ways around restrictions, perpetuating the cycle of mistrust that ultimately leads to a more fragile financial ecosystem. Meanwhile, policymakers, emboldened by their self-righteousness, seem blissfully unaware that each action meant to provide security further disrupts the very stability they seek to uphold. The continuous printing of money to stabilize the economy creates a tug-of-war between immediate relief and long-term repercussions. While flooding the system with liquidity may seem like a quick fix, it disregards the foundational realities. Asset values become distorted, and the purchasing power of your hard-earned dollar is diminished. The specter of hyperinflation lingers in the shadows, even as officials assure us of control. As they tout their virtuous intentions, we find ourselves at a precipice. The very legislation intended to protect us behooves caution. It is an intricate dance where every footfall threatens to alienate us further from the foundational security we once believed embedded in our financial systems. The dissonance between government proclamations and the lived experiences of ordinary citizens exposes the widening chasm of trust as the discontent festers beneath the surface. The masks of confidence that the authorities wear will ultimately slip. The facade they present is fraying, stretched too thin to endure the strain of reality. As the signals grow louder, it is incumbent upon us to prepare not merely for shifts in fiscal policy, but for a recalibration of how we understand value, trust, and security in this new order. Whether fueled by systemic failures or bureaucratic solutions that promise more than they deliver, the perilous truth remains. Our financial world stands precariously balanced on the edge of transformation. It is a moment of reckoning that we must not ignore, for ignoring it only leads to deeper vulnerabilities. The warnings are there. We must heed them. The time for preparations and recalibrations is now. As we dissect the actions of one of the most astute investors of our age, Warren Buffett, we unveil a strategic mindset that places survival over speculation. In times of uncertainty, Buffett's moves are not mere market reactions. They offer critical insights into the undercurrents of the economic landscape. In the face of an unfolding financial crisis, we observe a clear narrative emerging from his most recent portfolio adjustments. A decisive retreat from fragility while making calculated acquisitions that signal preparedness for the challenges ahead. What's paramount to note is what Buffett is selling. Reports indicate a significant reduction in his stakes in traditional banking institutions, which historically have been the backbone of American finance. Berkshire Hathaway's divestments from banks and consumer goods companies are telling. This isn't simply a matter of taking profits during a market upswing. It reveals a deep-seated recognition of the volatility that presently clouds the banking sector. The vulnerabilities inherent in these institutions have never been more evident as we grapple with the ramifications of a bank blackout, the very phenomenon of accounts being frozen and access denied. The fragility of banks, a sector central to economic stability, has come under the microscope. As institutions attempt to reassure citizens that strength permeates their capital holdings, Buffett's actions scream a different story. He recognizes that these are not the characteristics of a resilient financial infrastructure, but rather signs of impending peril. There exists an awareness that consumer confidence is not a currency, but a fleeting sentiment that can vanish in a moment. By offloading such assets, Buffett positions himself away from the eye of the brewing storm, reallocating his resources before the true consequences of a banking system undone by complacency become apparent. Conversely, let us take note of what Buffett is actively buying. His focus has pivoted toward real assets, investments in energy, railroads, and short-term treasury bills. This strategy underscores an evolution in thinking, whereby he opts for stability over the allure of high-flying yet ultimately precarious equities. Energy, in its various forms, remains an indispensable pillar of modern economies, whether through oil, gas, or renewable resources, and companies within this sector wield inherent stability due to the constant demand they face. Similarly, railroads represent the lifeblood of goods transportation, an irreplaceable link in supply chains that increasingly feel strained under the weight of uncertainty. Investing in railroads not only aligns with Buffett's principles of value investing, but also reflects a long-term vision anchored firmly in practicality. In a world where banks and financial instruments flounder, the needs of people, energy, transportation, and foundational resources remain unyielding. Buffett's forays into these industries are akin to laying a solid foundation from which to weather forthcoming financial storms. Short-term treasury bills present yet another layer to this strategic matrix. In an environment where volatility reigns, cash positions are paramount as they afford flexibility during turbulent times. Treasury bills are a conduit through which investors can direct their liquidity toward perceived security. With expectations pivoting toward a possible recession and inflation concerns gnawing at purchasing power, Buffett's posture reflects a far-sighted approach that favors resilience, investing in environments akin to a financial oasis rather than immersing himself in market noise. Buffett's rationale behind these moves is plain and resolute. Survival must triumph over speculation. In this precarious moment where yesterday's certainties dissolve beneath our feet, the wisdom encapsulated in his portfolio adjustments urges us to recalibrate our own strategies. Acknowledging the fragility of the intricate financial web we've come to rely upon inspires a renewed focus on solid foundations, investments that withstand the winds of change. As we witness the disintegration of long-standing trust in our banking systems, it is crucial to internalize Buffett's methodology as a call to action. Prioritize the tangible and the steadfast. The era of abstract finance, riddled with potential pitfalls and uncertainties, must give way to a calculated appraisal that values real assets over the ephemeral dance of speculative gains. In the unfolding orchestration of economic shifts, may we remember the lessons disguised within Buffett's choices, echoing the enduring truth that adaptability is the key to navigating turbulent waters ahead. This is not merely about mitigating risk, it is about thriving amidst adversity. As we stand on the precipice of an evolving financial landscape, one that is increasingly revealing the cracks in a system long believed to be stable, it's essential to confront the question, what can we do now to protect ourselves from the creeping calamity of a bank blackout? The situation is urgent. Our financial wellness hangs in the balance, and as the uncertainty looms, it is time for proactive measures. Here are the concrete actions you must consider undertaking right now to navigate the challenges ahead. First, prioritize self-custody. This cannot be overstated. Move a portion of your cash holdings into a self-custodied solution. This could involve withdrawing a percentage of your funds and storing them in a secure physical setting, such as a safe, or investing in precious metals like gold and silver. The goal here is to distance your assets from the vulnerable banking system. In doing so, you reclaim control over your financial security, allowing you to bypass potential freezes on your funds. Remember, the essence of self-custody lies in securing your savings outside of institutions that may falter in times of crisis. Next, assess your liquidity. This involves liquidating any non-essential assets and maintaining a robust cash reserve. If you own shares of high-risk equities or investments that, while promising, rely on a fragile economic environment, consider offloading them in favor of liquid assets. Cash is king in turbulent times. It affords you flexibility amidst chaos. The liquidity you retain will empower you to act swiftly when opportunities arise or when necessary purchases may need to be made. Ensure that your emergency fund is adequate, ideally covering 6 months to a year of your living expenses, as security lies in preparedness. Third, evaluate your debt exposure rigorously. In a time when economic uncertainties prevail, debt can become an anchor weighing you down. Identify high-interest liabilities or revolving debts, those burdens that erode your financial freedom. Prioritize eliminating or reducing these debts. The goal is to become unshackled from the chains of financial dependency. Freeing yourself from high-interest credit cards or loans reduces your vulnerability when the tides shift unpredictably. Every dollar you save on interest could prove instrumental if your income comes under threat due to a broader economic downturn. Simultaneously, invest in real assets. Precious metals, agricultural land, and tangible commodities can provide a hedge against inflation and systemic instability. Unlike fiat currencies, which can be subject to policy-driven erosion, real assets retain intrinsic value. Consider allocating a portion of your portfolio to these investments, as they serve dual purposes. They act as a store of value and a fortress against the whims of an unpredictable financial system. The old adage rings true. During crisis, tangible assets often weather the storm far better than abstract investments. Further, it is prudent to audit your current financial structures. Scrutinize your bank accounts, investment portfolios, and insurance policies meticulously. Verify the stability and reputation of the banking institutions housing your assets. If you detect any complacency or hesitation regarding their practices, act decisively. If your institution shows signs of fragility, through delayed transactions or negative news, consider transferring funds to a more robust institution. Review your investment allocations, ensuring they align with a defensive posture and safeguard against potential downturns. Lastly, cultivate an expansive network of knowledge. Surround yourself with insights that foster informed decision-making. Engage with financial experts, attend webinars, or explore literature that deepens your comprehension of market dynamics. Knowledge is a powerful tool, and in an age where information can dictate outcomes, staying ahead of the curve enables you to adapt swiftly to changes. The key takeaway here is not merely to act out of fear, but with mindful strategy and intention. The actions you take today lay the groundwork for your financial resilience tomorrow. The unfolding crisis is not an endpoint, but a call to recalibrate your mindset and approach toward finances. The time for preparation is now. Do not wait for the skies to darken further. Embrace the wisdom of self-governance. The path toward stability begins with you. Adapting proactively in this fluid moment will define your journey through the storm. As we draw to the conclusion of this discourse on the emerging banking crisis, a phenomenon that has escalated into the very real despair of bank blackouts, it becomes ever more evident that the intricacies of our financial systems are not only flawed, but precariously positioned at the precipice of collapse. The alarming frequency of frozen accounts and sudden access denials, which have rattled everyday lives, serve as a stark reminder of how tenuous the trust we place in these institutions truly is. Yet, for those who have the fortitude to see beyond the surface, there lies a bitter, sobering truth. The system will correct itself, albeit not without significant turmoil along the way. History compels us to acknowledge that every crisis is an opportunity. It is the universe's way of recalibrating imbalances that have long been festering beneath the surface. Our current financial machinations, characterized by reckless overleverage and a pervasive air of unearned trust, beg for scrutiny and revision. Central banks and governments, those oft misguided architects of our economic framework, have repeatedly demonstrated their inclination to complicate solutions rather than implement necessary reforms. Their promise of stability is curtailed by the harsh reality that such mendacity is the very reason we find ourselves grappling with existential financial crises. They are ill-equipped to address the disintegration of trust or to stanch the wounds inflicted by their own policies. Rather than waiting for the benefactors of our financial institutions to come to our rescue, we must accept that we are the architects of our own resilience. No one is coming to save you. It is a hard truth for many to stomach, but in a world rife with uncertainty, empowerment lies in self-reliance. The illusion of safety we once gained from a fortified banking system has given way to sobering realities that necessitate personal accountability, vigilance, and preparation. While governments may tout their well-intentioned policies, their efficacy in crisis management is undermined by their own miscalculations. Look no further than the roiling chaos of the present moment. Trust has been broken, and the stakes have never been higher. It is time for individuals to embrace the mantle of responsibility. Awareness and proactive measures must take precedence as the architecture of our financial lives shifts beneath us. The need for direct action cannot be overstated, whether through the self-custody of your assets, carefully considering your liquidity, or investing in real, tangible assets that withstand the erosion of fiat currencies. The prevailing sentiment of the past, that we can solely rely on institutions to safeguard our wealth, must be decisively jettisoned. Instead, let us take stock of the resources available to us and forge a plan that mirrors the unavoidable realities we now face. In this evolving landscape, your financial security is no longer an abstract concept, but a tangible reality that necessitates your engagement. Embrace a mindset governed by foresight and discernment as you navigate the murky financial waters. The challenges presented by this generational shift will demand a recalibration of our beliefs, establishing a framework of prudence that endures beyond fleeting moments of uncertainty. As the dust settles on this latest crisis, count on history to be your guide. The patterns emerging today echo those painfully familiar echoes of the past. Embrace the stoic understanding that we are often pulled toward the chasm of complacency, only to realize too late the need for fortitude and adaptability. Prepare accordingly, not with despondency nor reliance on external saviors, but instead, with the resolute self-awareness that can only flourish in moments of adversity. In this collective journey, strength emerges from unity and understanding, where the burdens of financial responsibility are shared by wise and thoughtful individuals alike. For as we scrutinize the fabric of our modern financial infrastructure and witness its complexities unravel, let us be emboldened by the knowledge that the pathway forward is ours to shape. And so, we must summon those lessons of history and the courage to act, ready for the journey ahead. Change is the only constant, and it is in this truth that we find our power. Embrace the path of self-responsibility. The system may appear daunting, but those who prepare will not merely survive. They will emerge resilient in a transformed world. Fade to black.